Baba Vanga's 2025 Alien Invasion Prophecy Prayer for Protection. Have you ever paused and wondered, what are we really afraid of? Is it what's out there, or what's rising quietly within? In 2025, the world feels strangely tense, as if reality itself is stretching thinner by the day. News of AI breakthroughs, rising global unrest, and sudden climate shifts fills our screens. But beneath all that noise, there's a deeper silence, a collective breath being held. Some say it's anticipation, others say it's fear. And in times like this, our minds often reach backwards, grasping for ancient truths or forgotten foresight. We find ourselves drawn to mystics of the past, those who seem to see beyond the veil. Among them, the name Baba Vanga echoes once more, the blind seer of Bulgaria. Her prophecy, an alien invasion in the year 2025. Today, on the journey of wisdom, we will not meet this prophecy with fear or fascination alone. Instead, we ask a different kind of question. What if the true alien invasion isn't something descending from the stars, but the daily invasion of fear into our hearts, of chaos into our peace, of disconnection into our communities? And what if the strongest protection isn't something built by science or force, but something as simple and sacred as a prayer? This isn't just a story about predictions. It's a spiritual reflection, a call to turn inward toward the clarity, calm, and courage that live in all of us. Join me as we walk this path together. The woman behind the legend. Who was Baba Vanga? So, before we can even begin to understand her prophecies, we first have to understand the woman. Who was this person whose name echoes into our modern world? Her story begins not in mystery, but in the humble setting of a small village in what is now North Macedonia. She was born Vangelia Pandeva Dimitrova in 1911, a premature baby, and by all accounts, destined for an ordinary life. But fate, as it so often does in these stories, had a different plan. The defining moment of her life came when she was just a young girl. According to the legend, a powerful and strange storm, some have even described it as a tornado, swept through her village. It lifted her into the air and threw her into a nearby field. When she was found, her eyes were sealed shut, filled with sand and dust, leaving her permanently blind. It was in this moment of profound darkness, Vanga would later claim, that she was given a different kind of sight. She began to experience visions, to hear voices, and to believe she could communicate with a world unseen by others. As her reputation grew, people from all over Bulgaria and beyond began to make the journey to her small home. They didn't just come seeking grand prophecies about the fate of the world. Most came with the simple, heartbreaking problems of everyday life: a missing loved one, an undiagnosed illness, a failing crop. To them, she was less of a global oracle and more of a spiritual counselor, an herbalist, a source of comfort in a harsh world. She became a figure of folklore, a beacon of hope for the common person. Her fame grew so much that even the communist government of Bulgaria, which was officially atheist, took notice. They saw her not as a mystic, but as a national asset. They placed her on the state payroll, effectively turning her into a government employee, and visitors were charged a fee to see her, bringing in revenue for the state. This complex relationship with power adds another layer to her already enigmatic story. But as we listen to the tales of her incredible predictions, it is crucial to understand one simple fact. We have no diaries, no journals, no books written by Vanga herself. She was functionally illiterate. Her prophecies exist only as a collection of second-hand accounts, memories, and interpretations recorded by assistants or passed down through decades by those who visited her. This is not to dismiss her legacy, but to embrace it for what it is, a fact that invites both faith and skepticism. It asks us to be thoughtful storytellers ourselves, to separate the woman from the myth and to understand that her life was as much about the human need for connection and guidance as it was about any vision of the future. She passed away in 1996, leaving behind not a book of certainties, but a legend that continues to be told and retold, shaped by the hopes and fears of each new generation that discovers her. Deconstructing the prophecy. What was really said? So, now that we have a clearer picture of the woman, let's turn our attention to the words themselves. Specifically, this dramatic prophecy about an alien encounter in 2025. This is where the story gets fascinating, because when you begin to peel back the layers of internet headlines and sensational videos, you find that the core of the prophecy is far more elusive than it first appears. When you search for what Baba Vanga actually said, you don't find a clear, terrifying pronouncement. There's no single, authenticated quote that says, "In 2025, hostile aliens will invade Earth." Instead, what you find are fragmented and often vague statements pieced together over time. Some accounts claim she said that humanity will make contact with beings from another world. Others mention a new presence that comes from the stars, which would change the destiny of mankind forever. Notice the words contact, presence. These are neutral terms, open to a vast range of interpretations. They could mean anything from the discovery of microbial life on a distant planet to a spiritual awakening inspired by the cosmos. Yet, over time, these ambiguous phrases have been molded into a very specific and very frightening narrative. The word you hear most often now is invasion, but it's a word that seems to have been attached to her legacy much later, amplified by the echo chamber of modern media. It's a word that sells a story far better than contact. So, how did a vague mention of contact transform into a terrifying narrative of invasion? The answer, perhaps, lies less in the prophecy itself and more in the anxieties of the world that hears it. We live in an age that often feels on the brink of something, be it conflict, collapse, or radical change. Our collective imagination is already primed for dramatic scenarios, and a story about a hostile takeover from the stars fits neatly into that underlying feeling of dread. It gives a face to our nameless anxieties. To have an honest conversation about this, we also have to look at the full picture of her track record, not just the handful of stunning hits that are so often repeated. For every prophecy that seems eerily accurate, like her supposed vision of steel birds attacking America, there are many others that have unequivocally failed to come true. For instance, followers have pointed to predictions that a Third World War would begin in 2010, resulting in a nuclear and chemical conflict that would leave Europe a barren wasteland by 2016. That time came and went. She is also said to have predicted that the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, would be the country's last. This isn't meant to discredit her or the experiences of those who found comfort in her words. Rather, it's to introduce a very human element into how we process these kinds of predictions. Psychologists have a name for this tendency: confirmation bias. It's our natural inclination to remember the predictions that seem to come true and to conveniently forget the ones that don't. We seek out information that confirms what we already want to believe, and we discard the rest. There's also something called the Barnum effect, named after the famous showman P.T. Barnum. It's the reason horoscopes can feel so deeply personal. A statement is made that is so general and open-ended, like, "You will face a significant challenge soon," that almost anyone can find a way to make it fit their life. Many of Vanga's prophecies operate in a similar way. A vision of a great disaster can be applied to a tsunami, an earthquake, a financial crash, or even a political upheaval. The prophecy itself doesn't change. Our interpretation of it does, shaped by the events that happen around us. By understanding these human tendencies, we can begin to see the story of Baba Vanga not as a simple case of a prophet being right or wrong, but as a fascinating look into the nature of belief itself. We are the ones who weave these vague threads into a coherent story. We are the ones who give the prophecy its power and its meaning. And in the case of the 2025 alien encounter, it seems we have collectively chosen to weave a story of fear. The question we must now ask is, why? Why that story, and why now? The 2025 context. Why now? Why this story? And that brings us to the most immediate question, the one that anchors this entire discussion in our present moment. Why this story, and why now? A prophecy that has floated around for decades has suddenly gained a powerful new resonance in 2025. This is no accident. Its resurgence is directly tied to a profound and undeniable shift that has been happening in our own culture, particularly here in the United States. For most of our lives, for anyone over the age of, say, 40, the topic of UFOs was largely a subject of ridicule. It was the stuff of tabloid magazines, late-night radio shows, and science fiction conventions. To speak about it seriously in professional circles was to risk your credibility. The official government stance was one of dismissal, a steady narrative that these sightings were weather balloons, swamp gas, or simply misidentified conventional aircraft. That was the world we knew. But then, in the early 2020s, something unprecedented began to happen. The official story started to crack. The watershed moment came in 2021. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, or ODNI, released an official unclassified report to Congress on what it no longer called UFOs, but unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. Let that sink in for a moment. For the first time, the United States government formally admitted, in writing, that there were numerous objects recorded by our most advanced military sensors that they could not identify. These objects, the report stated, appeared to demonstrate advanced technology, performing maneuvers impossible for any known aircraft moving at incredible speeds without any visible means of propulsion. This wasn't a blurry photo from a backyard anymore. This was the Pentagon. That report opened the floodgates. The now famous videos, declassified by the Department of Defense videos, given nicknames like Gimbal, Go Fast, and Tic Tac, were released to the public. We saw with our own eyes what Navy pilots had been reporting for years. Strange, smooth objects outmaneuvering our best fighter jets with ease. And then, the conversation moved from official reports to the halls of Congress itself. We witnessed historic public hearings where high-ranking decorated intelligence officials testified under oath. Men like David Grush, a former Air Force intelligence officer, made extraordinary claims before the world, alleging that the government was in possession of not just unidentified craft, but craft of non-human origin, and that this information had been illegally withheld from Congress and the public for decades. It's a complete 180 from the culture of denial we grew up with. This topic has migrated from the fringe to the mainstream. It's now discussed openly on the most popular podcasts in the world. It's the subject of serious, investigative documentaries by major studios and articles in the New York Times. The question is no longer if these phenomena are real, but what they are. Now, let's connect this back to the old prophecy from the Bulgarian mystic. It's not that these events prove Baba Vanga was right. That would be a leap too far. Rather, what these real-world disclosures have done is create a fertile ground for her prophecy to take root and grow in our collective imagination. The government's new stance of transparency, or at least of admitting its own ignorance, has fundamentally changed our perception of what is possible. When the Pentagon itself admits there are things in our skies it cannot explain, The idea of contact suddenly moves from the realm of fiction to the edge of possibility, and so the old story finds a new and willing audience. A prophecy that once seemed like distant folklore now feels strangely relevant, as if it's echoing the very questions our own top officials are now asking. This is the context of 2025. It's a unique moment in history where official mystery and ancient prophecy have converged, leaving us all to wonder what, if anything, comes next. The metaphorical invasion, facing the aliens within. So here we stand, at a crossroads where ancient prophecy and modern mystery meet. It's a fascinating place to be. We could spend the rest of our time speculating about lights in the sky, about government secrets and otherworldly beings, and perhaps there is a time and place for that. But tonight, I want to invite you to consider a different path, a path that leads not further out into the cosmos, but deeper into ourselves. This is the moment where we pivot from the prophecy to the prayer. Let's hold the idea of an alien invasion in our minds for a moment, but let's look at it through a new lens. Let's treat it not as a literal prediction, but as a powerful metaphor for our modern condition. Because while we've been looking to the skies for signs of an invasion, we may have missed the one that has been happening all around us, and even inside of us, for years. What if the true aliens are not beings with strange eyes, but algorithms with no empathy, designed to keep us angry and afraid, simply because that is what keeps us watching? These are truly alien intelligences, not of flesh and blood, but of code, and their presence has fundamentally reshaped our society. What if the real invasion is the constant, relentless bombardment of noise that drowns out our own inner voice? The 24-hour news cycles, the endless social media feeds, the notifications that ping and buzz, pulling our attention in 1,000 different directions until we no longer know what we truly think or feel. Our own minds have been occupied by forces that do not have our best interests at heart. And what if the takeover isn't a sudden dramatic event, but the slow, quiet surrender of the very things that make us feel most human? Our critical thinking, given away to headlines that confirm our biases. Our compassion, eroded by a culture that encourages us to see each other as caricatures rather than complex people. And our peace of mind, sacrificed at the altar of constant connectivity and manufactured outrage. This is the metaphorical invasion. It's not science fiction, it's the lived reality of 2025. It's the feeling of being a stranger in our own world, of being alienated from our neighbors, from our institutions, and sometimes even from ourselves. This slow creep of anxiety, division, and information overload is far more real and far more damaging to our daily lives than any hypothetical spaceship. The prophecy, perhaps unintentionally, has given us the perfect language to describe the spiritual and psychological battle of our time. It has given us a story that helps us understand the profound sense of unease we all feel, the sense that some alien force is indeed disrupting our world, but that force isn't from the stars. It's from the systems we ourselves have built. So, we've journeyed from the dusty fields of Bulgaria to the marbled halls of the U.S. Congress, from a whispered prophecy to the tangible anxieties of our time. We've seen how perhaps the greatest value of a story like this is not in its power to predict the future, but in its power to force us to look more deeply and more honestly at our present. It has become a mirror, reflecting back to us the challenges we face not from without, but from within. This is just the beginning of our conversation. In the next part, we will turn our focus fully inward, exploring the nature of prayer and what true protection really means in these uncertain times. But before we do, I would be honored to hear your thoughts. Looking at the world through this new lens, what are the metaphorical invasions you feel you are facing in your own life? Is it the invasion of noise, of fear, of division? And more importantly, what gives you a sense of peace amidst that noise? Please, feel free to share your reflections in the comments below. Your wisdom is not just a comment, it adds to the light that we are all seeking to find here together. The sanctuary within, a daily prayer for protection. So, our journey through the unsettling whispers of prophecy has led us not to the stars, but back to ourselves. We've come to see that the most pressing invasions we truly face might be those happening right here in our daily lives, the constant noise, the persistent division, and that quiet, gnawing uncertainty. This shared understanding leads us naturally to the next, and perhaps most important, step of our journey. If the threat is indeed internal, if the battles we fight are for our own peace of mind and clarity of heart, what then is our protection? This brings us to the very heart of our title, the prayer for protection. We will explore this not as a plea born of fear, not as a desperate cry into the void, but as a quiet practice born of strength. We will discover it as a conscious, deliberate way to build an unshakable sanctuary within, a place of peace that can stand firm no matter the storms that may rage outside. Redefining protection, shield of the soul. To truly begin this part of our journey, we first need to pause and completely redefine a word we think we know so well: protection. For most of our lives, for as long as we can remember, protection has been an external concept. It's a word we associate with the physical world. It means walls to keep out the wind, a roof to keep out the rain. It means locks on our doors, alarms for our homes, seatbelts in our cars. It's about building a tangible, physical barrier between ourselves and a perceived threat from the outside world. And of course, that kind of protection has its place. It's practical. It's necessary for our survival. But the protection we are seeking now is for a different kind of threat, one that those physical barriers cannot touch. The challenges we identified earlier, the invasions of noise, fear, and division, cannot be kept out by a locked door. They don't ring the doorbell. They are silent and invisible. They seep in through our screens, through the tone of our conversations, through the very air of our culture. They are threats not to our physical safety, but to the very essence of our inner world, our spiritual and emotional well-being. And so, it stands to reason that they require a different kind of shield. Let's think about this for a moment, in very real terms. What protects your mind from a headline on your phone that has been scientifically crafted by teams of people to provoke an immediate, powerful jolt of anger or fear? A lock cannot stop it. What shields your heart from the slow, steady drip of cynicism that can come from watching the news day after day, until you begin to believe that the world is only a place of conflict and sorrow? A wall cannot block it. What guards the natural compassion in your spirit from hardening into judgment after a difficult encounter, or after being worn down by the harshness you see online? These questions reveal a deeper truth. The true protection our souls desperately need in this modern age is not about keeping the world out. That's an impossible task, and frankly, it's not even a desirable one. We are not meant to be isolated hermits. We are meant to live in this world, to engage with it, to love it, and to help heal it. No, true protection, perhaps, is about managing how the world is allowed to live inside of us. This is not some new age idea. It is an ancient wisdom understood by the wisest among us for centuries. The great Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius, wrote about this 2,000 years ago in his private journals. He was one of the most powerful men in the world, constantly surrounded by betrayals, political schemes, plagues, and the pressures of war. He knew he could not control any of it. But what he could control, with absolute certainty, was the fortress within his own mind. He called it his inner citadel. It was a place of such profound tranquility and rational strength that no amount of external chaos could ever breach its walls. His body could be on a battlefield, but his mind could remain in a state of peace. That was his sanctuary. That was his true shield. In our modern language, we might call this psychological resilience or the practice of emotional regulation. It is the learned ability to remain centered, to remain the calm eye in the center of the hurricane, even when the winds of the world are howling around us. This is not about suppressing our feelings or putting on a brave face and pretending that difficult things aren't happening. It is the exact opposite. It is about creating enough inner space to be able to fully feel our emotions, sadness, anger, fear, without being consumed and controlled by them. It's the difference between being in the storm and being the storm. So, the protection we seek to cultivate is not a hard, impenetrable wall that isolates us and makes us brittle. Instead, let's think of it as three gentle but powerful forms of active inner guardianship. First, and most fundamentally, it is the protection of our peace. This is the conscious daily decision to guard our inner tranquility as our most precious and sacred resource. It means coming to understand that our state of mind is not a random weather pattern that simply happens to us. It is a garden, and we are the gardeners. We can learn to recognize the difference between the seeds we want to plant, seeds of gratitude, of patience, of acceptance, and the weeds that try to grow on their own, the persistent weeds of anxiety, resentment, and worry. Protecting our peace means tending to this garden each day, gently pulling the weeds before they have a chance to take root and choke out the light. Second, it is the protection of our clarity. In an age of overwhelming and often conflicting information, clarity is our compass. Without it, we are lost at sea. Protecting our clarity means actively choosing not to be swept away by every emotional current that a news story or a social media post tries to create. It is the learned skill of pausing before we react. It is taking a single deep breath and creating a moment of space to ask those quiet, powerful questions. Is this information true? Is it helpful for me to focus on this right now? Is this burden mine to carry? This shield of clarity allows us to see the world as it is, in all its complexity, not just as our fears or our pre-existing biases would have us see it. And third, it is the protection of our compassion. This may be the most difficult and the most important of all. In a world that often feels harsh and unforgiving, our hearts can grow weary. It is a natural defense mechanism to build calluses, to toughen up, to stop feeling so much, just to protect ourselves from further pain. But a calloused heart is not a protected heart. It is an imprisoned one. True protection is the courageous act of keeping our hearts soft and open. It is guarding our innate ability to feel empathy for others, and just as importantly, for ourselves, even when it's difficult. It is the shield that ensures we do not lose our own humanity in the face of what can sometimes feel like an inhuman world. This, then, is the shield of the soul. It is not forged in a great fire, but cultivated in the quiet moments of our lives. It is not a defense against the world, but a way to live in the world more fully, more peacefully, and more lovingly. And the tool we use to cultivate it, the daily practice that gives it strength and makes it real, is what we can simply and universally call prayer. The universal nature of prayer, more than just words. Now, as we stand at the threshold of this inner sanctuary, ready to explore the practice that builds and protects it, we arrive at a word. It's a word that, for many people, can be a little complicated. It's a word that carries with it a great deal of history, both personal and collective. That word is prayer. Let's be honest and gentle with ourselves about this. For some who are listening, that word is a source of immense and immediate comfort. It is a direct and beautiful connection to God, a sacred conversation that has sustained them through their entire lives. It is a lifeline, a source of strength, and a wellspring of grace. For others, perhaps because of their upbringing or difficult experiences, that same word can feel exclusionary. It might be tied to a specific doctrine, a set of rigid rules, or a building they no longer feel welcome in. It might bring up feelings of guilt or judgment, a sense that they were doing it wrong. For them, the word itself can feel like a closed door. And for still others, it might not hold much specific meaning at all. It might feel like something that belongs to other people, a practice from another time, without a clear place in their own modern lives. And I want to say, with all the sincerity in my heart, that wherever you find yourself on that spectrum, you are welcome here. All of those experiences are valid and understood. Because for our journey together today, I want to invite you to gently set aside any and all preconceived notions you might have about that word. We are going to explore the idea of prayer not as a religious requirement, but as a universal human impulse, something as natural to our spirit as breathing is to our body. We are going to look past the specific rituals and the formal doctrines to find the simple, powerful, and life-giving essence that is available to every single one of us, regardless of our spiritual path, of our beliefs, or our doubts. So, what is prayer at its most fundamental level when we strip away all the external layers? At its heart, it is a conscious and deliberate act of shifting our attention. That is where it begins. It is the decision to momentarily, even for just 30 seconds, turn down the deafening volume of the outside world, the demands, the deadlines, the news, the noise, so that we can begin to hear the quiet, subtle wisdom of our inner world. It is the simple act of creating a small, sacred space in the midst of a busy day. It's a sanctuary made not of stone, but of time. From that simple act of pausing, it then becomes an act of connection. It is the intentional turning of our heart and our mind towards something that we sense is larger than our individual ego, larger than our daily worries and fears. It is an act of humility, an acknowledgement that we are not the sole masters of the universe. For some, as we said, that connection is deeply personal. It's an intimate conversation with God, with Jesus, with a higher power as they understand them. It is a beautiful dialogue of speaking and, just as importantly, of listening. It can be a prayer of petition, asking for guidance or help. It can be a prayer of praise, marveling at the beauty of creation. Or it can be a prayer of communion, simply resting in a divine presence. For others, the connection might be less personal and more universal. It can be a moment of aligning their own small, finite existence with the vast, silent intelligence of the universe itself. It can be a practice of feeling their own breath sync up with the great, cosmic rhythm of life, recognizing themselves as a part of something infinite, ancient, and mysterious. And for still others, that connection is with their own deepest and truest self, what some might call the soul, or the inner light. It's that wise, compassionate, and resilient core of our being that so often gets buried under the thick layers of stress, responsibility, and societal expectation. For them, prayer can be a moment to reconnect with their most cherished and fundamental values, like integrity, kindness, courage, and love, making sure their life is aligned with what matters most to them. The beautiful truth here is that the specific object of the connection is less important than the sincere and humble act of connecting itself. When we see prayer through this wider, more inclusive lens, we begin to recognize it everywhere, in countless forms, across all cultures and all of history. The Buddhist monk, sitting in silent meditation, is not speaking, but is in a profound state of prayer, a prayer of deep listening, of paying loving attention to the nature of reality itself. The contemplative Christian tradition of the Desert Fathers speaks of a wordless prayer, a practice of simply being present and open to the love of God, beyond the need for words or petitions. Let's bring this into our own lives. Have you ever walked alone in a forest, surrounded by the quiet strength of ancient trees, and felt a sense of awe and peace wash over you, a feeling that you are part of something old and sacred. That is a prayer. Have you ever stood at the edge of the ocean and just watched the waves roll in, one after another, and felt your own problems shrink in the face of that immense, timeless, rhythmic power? That, too, is a prayer. It is a prayer of wonder and profound humility. Even the simple private act of writing in a journal can be a powerful form of prayer. It is a way to pour out the tangled, chaotic thoughts of our minds onto the page, creating a compassionate dialogue with ourselves that brings clarity and release. It is a way of listening to what our own heart is trying to tell us, beneath all the noise. Prayer, in this universal sense, is any moment we consciously pause the outer world to connect with our inner one. It is the quiet intention you set for the day as you wait for your coffee to brew. It is the silent, heartfelt moment of gratitude you feel before a meal. It is the single, deep, centering breath you take before you choose to respond to a difficult situation with kindness instead of anger. It is not always about speaking. Often, its greatest power is found in listening. It is a practice that belongs to everyone. It requires no special building, no intermediary, no prescribed words that you must get right. It only requires a willing heart, a moment of your time, and the courage to turn inward. And it is in that quiet, sacred space that we begin to build our shield. The 4 pillars of a protective prayer. So, if prayer is the quiet, universal practice we use to build our inner sanctuary, what does that practice actually look like day to day? What are the intentions we can set? What are the essential qualities we seek to cultivate within ourselves to feel truly and deeply protected in this restless world? We can think of this protective prayer as being built upon 4 foundational pillars. These are not rigid words you must recite, but rather, they are deep, resonant intentions that you can hold in your heart in your own way. They are universal aspirations that can guide our inner work, bringing strength and light to our days. Let's explore them one by one. The first, and perhaps most essential pillar in our modern age, is a prayer for clarity. This is our direct and powerful protection against the metaphorical invasion of confusion, manipulation, and overwhelming noise. It is the conscious practice of seeking a calm, centered, and discerning mind. In a world that is constantly shouting for our attention, where every screen and every headline seems to have been engineered to provoke an immediate and powerful emotional reaction, clarity is our greatest shield. It's the difference between being tossed about by the waves and being the lighthouse that watches them. It allows us to step back from the frenzy, take a breath, and see things as they truly are, not just as they are presented. The intention for this pillar might sound and feel something like this. Let this be a prayer for a quiet mind. In a world that is shouting, may I learn to listen to the whisper of my own intuition. In a sea of information, may I find the wisdom to discern the signal from the noise, the truth from the distraction. May I be protected from the temptation of easy answers and the seductive lure of angry rhetoric, which promise certainty but deliver only division. Grant me the patience to sit with complexity, to be comfortable with not knowing, and instead of rushing to judgment, may I be guided, always, toward understanding, toward nuance, and toward the quiet, unshakable voice of truth that resides within. This prayer doesn't ask for all the answers about the world, it simply asks for the peace of mind to seek them wisely. The second pillar, which supports all of our actions in the world, is a prayer for courage. This is our protection against the insidious invasion of fear and anxiety. Now, it's very important to note, this is not a prayer for a life without fear. That would be an impossible and even an inhuman life. Fear is a natural, healthy emotion. It often signals that we deeply care about something, that something precious is at stake. A life without fear would likely be a life without love, without risk, without growth. So instead, this is a prayer for the presence of courage in the face of fear. It is the strength to act, to move, to love, and to live, even when our hands are trembling a little. The intention for this pillar might feel like this in your heart. Let this be a prayer, not for the absence of fear, but for the quiet, enduring presence of courage. When the future feels uncertain and the path ahead is shrouded in mist, may I find the simple strength to just place one foot in front of the other. May I be reminded, in moments of doubt, that my spirit is more resilient than my mind often believes. May I trust that I have the capacity to face whatever comes with a sense of grace and inherent dignity. Protect me from the paralysis of the endless what-ifs that drain my energy, and instead root me in the solid, present-moment strength of, I can handle this. This prayer builds the resolve not to conquer the world, but to faithfully walk our own path within it. The third pillar, which connects us back to each other, is a prayer for compassion. This is our most powerful antidote to the relentless invasion of division, judgment, and contempt. It is the conscious, and sometimes difficult, practice of keeping the heart open when every instinct and every headline tells us to close it down for our own protection. In a world that so often encourages us to see each other in terms of simplistic labels, as political opponents, as statistics, as the other, compassion is the radical act of remembering the complex, fragile, and sacred humanity we all share. It is the most powerful protection we have against the poisons of bitterness and isolation. The Great Awakening, living a protected life. In the last part of our journey, we walked an inward path. We learned to redefine protection not as a wall against the world, but as a sanctuary within the soul, carefully built upon the four pillars of clarity, courage, compassion, and gratitude. We have tended to our own inner garden, learning the art of spiritual hygiene. But an inner sanctuary, no matter how peaceful, is not meant to be a permanent retreat from the world. It is meant to be a source of strength for the world. It is the place we return to each day to find our bearings, to fill our well, so that we may re-engage with life from a place of fullness rather than depletion. And so, this brings us to our final and most practical exploration. We now ask the crucial question: how do we actively live a protected life? How do we carry the peace of our inner sanctuary out into our daily actions, our relationships, and our communities? The answer is found through the gentle, consistent act of nourishing the soul. We will now walk together down 6 paths to nourish your soul in these turbulent times. These are not grand theories. They are simple, profound, and accessible practices that help us transform our inner state into our outer reality, allowing us to be a source of light and stability in a world that so deeply needs it. Weaving a daily practice, the art of spiritual hygiene. So, we have these 4 beautiful, powerful pillars: clarity, courage, compassion, and gratitude. They are the architecture of our inner sanctuary. But just knowing the blueprint isn't enough. A sanctuary that is never visited falls into disrepair. For these pillars to become a real, living shield in our lives, they must be supported by a daily practice. Now, I know that for many of us, the idea of adding one more thing to our already busy day can feel overwhelming. The word practice can sound like a chore, another item on an endless to-do list. But I want to invite you to think about it in a different way. Let's call it spiritual hygiene. It's a simple but profound idea. We all understand the importance of physical hygiene. Every day, we brush our teeth, wash our hands, take a shower. We don't do these things because they are exciting. We do them because we know they are essential for our physical health. They prevent the slow accumulation of things that could harm us. We do them consistently, not just when we feel sick, but as a preventative measure to maintain our well-being. Spiritual hygiene is exactly the same, but for our inner world. It is the simple, consistent daily practice of clearing away the mental and emotional debris that accumulates from living in a chaotic world. It's how we wash away the residue of fear, rinse off the grime of cynicism, and gently tend to the health of our own spirit. It's not a luxury. In the world we live in today, it is a necessity. And the wonderful news is that this does not require a huge commitment of time. This is not about adding another hour of obligation to your day. The power is not in the duration, but in the consistency. 5 minutes of sincere, focused intention is far more powerful than an hour of distracted, half-hearted effort once a week. So, what might this look like in a real life? Perhaps it's in the morning, in those precious few moments of quiet before the world rushes in. Maybe it's while you're waiting for your coffee to brew. Instead of reaching for your phone and immediately letting the world's anxieties flood your mind, you can simply stand by the window, take 3 slow, deep breaths, and gently set an intention for the day. You could choose one of the pillars. You could say to yourself, silently in your own heart, "Today, I will seek clarity. I will pause before I react." Or, "Today, I will choose courage. I will not let my anxieties make my decisions for me." It is a simple 2-minute act of orienting your inner compass before you set sail into the day. Or maybe you're someone who feels the weight of the world most heavily at night. The practice could be just before you go to sleep. After you turn out the light, instead of letting your mind race with the worries of the day or the anxieties of tomorrow, you could create a new habit. You could intentionally close the door on those thoughts and practice the pillar of gratitude. You could simply name 3 things from your day, no matter how small, that you are thankful for. I am grateful for the warm sun I felt on my face. I am grateful for that one productive conversation I had. I am grateful for the comfort of this bed. This simple practice can completely change the quality of your rest, clearing the mind of its burdens and steeping it in a sense of peace before sleep. The method is far less important than the consistency of the practice. Your prayer could be a walk in the park during your lunch break, where you intentionally focus on the beauty of nature instead of your work problems. It could be the 5 minutes you sit in your car in the driveway after work, using that time as a sacred transition between your public life and your private life, consciously letting go of the day's stress before you walk through the door. The key is to find these small, available pockets of time that already exist in your day and infuse them with intention. By doing so, you begin to weave these pillars into the very fabric of your life. You are not adding a new burden. You are transforming the moments you already have into opportunities for peace and protection. Over time, this quiet, consistent practice of spiritual hygiene becomes as natural as brushing your teeth, and its effect is just as profound. It builds, moment by moment, a resilient, peaceful, and truly protected heart. The Great Awakening. Living a protected life. In the last part of our journey, we walked an inward path. We learned to redefine protection not as a wall against the world, but as a sanctuary within the soul, carefully built upon the 4 pillars of clarity, courage, compassion, and gratitude. We have tended to our own inner garden, learning the art of spiritual hygiene. But an inner sanctuary, no matter how peaceful, is not meant to be a permanent retreat from the world. It is meant to be a source of strength for the world. It is the place we return to each day to find our bearings, to fill our well, so that we may re-engage with life from a place of fullness rather than depletion. And so, this brings us to our final and most practical exploration. We now ask the crucial question: how do we actively live a protected life? How do we carry the peace of our inner sanctuary out into our daily actions, our relationships, and our communities? The answer is found through the gentle, consistent act of nourishing the soul. We will now walk together down 6 paths to nourish your soul in these turbulent times. These are not grand theories. They are simple, profound, and accessible practices that help us transform our inner state into our outer reality, allowing us to be a source of light and stability in a world that so deeply needs it. The Six Paths of Nourishment. These 6 paths are not a checklist to be completed, not another set of tasks for an already busy life. Think of them instead as invitations. They are gentle, accessible ways to weave the peace and strength of your inner sanctuary into the very fabric of your outer life. They are how we live a protected life, day by day. Let us walk them together. The first path, finding stillness in the storm. The first and most fundamental way we nourish the soul in our modern world is by intentionally and courageously seeking out moments of stillness. Our world has declared a war on silence. From the moment our alarm clock rings to the moment we finally fall asleep, we are immersed in a relentless sea of noise, the noise of traffic, of television, of endless notifications and updates. This constant external noise inevitably creates a frantic internal noise, a relentless chatter in the mind that makes it almost impossible to hear our own intuition, our own inner wisdom, that quiet voice that always knows the way. Stillness is the antidote. It is the practice of creating small, sacred clearings in the dense, overgrown forest of our daily lives. It is vital to understand that this stillness is not emptiness. That is a common misconception. Stillness is a space that is profoundly full. It is filled with potential. It is the fertile soil in which insight, clarity, and creativity can finally grow. You do not need to go on a week-long silent retreat in a faraway monastery to find it. You can begin right where you are. Start small. True stillness can be found in the 5 minutes before the rest of the world wakes up, when you just sit with a cup of coffee or tea and look out the window, with no agenda other than to just be. It can be found in the moment in your car, after you've parked at your destination, but before you get out. Instead of immediately reaching for your phone, just turn off the engine, turn off the radio, close your eyes, and take 3 deep, slow breaths. That's it. In these small, reclaimed pockets of silence, we are not running from the world. We are recharging our ability to engage with it more fully, more peacefully, and more wisely when we return. The second path, building oases of true community. To counter the insidious invasion of division and the quiet epidemic of loneliness, we must actively nourish our souls with genuine, heartfelt human connection. Modern technology has given us a very convincing illusion of connection. We can have thousands of friends or followers online and yet feel more profoundly alone than ever before in human history. This is because true community is not about the quantity of our contacts, but the rich, nourishing quality of our connections. An algorithm, no matter how intelligent, can connect us to thousands, but it cannot replicate the simple, healing warmth of one trusted friend's understanding gaze across a coffee table. It cannot offer the profound comfort of a shared, easy silence with a loved one where nothing needs to be said. It cannot give us the strength of a hand placed gently on our shoulder when we are grieving. A true community is an oasis where our souls can finally drink. It is a safe harbor where we can be our authentic, imperfect selves without fear of judgment. So, I invite you to gently ask yourself, who are the people in your life who truly see you, who hear you, not just your words, but the feeling and the meaning behind them, who allow you to be vulnerable, to be uncertain, to be messy, and still love you. Nurture these connections as if they are the most precious resource you have, because they are. Make the phone call you've been putting off. Send the text. Arrange the dinner date. Invest your most valuable assets, your time and your full, undivided presence in the people who fill your well. They are your true shelter in any storm. The third path, the conscious diet of information. Just as we understand that we must be mindful of the food we put into our bodies, we must become equally mindful of the information we allow into our minds. We are living in an age of information gluttony, and much of what we consume daily is the equivalent of mental and emotional junk food. It's highly processed, engineered to be addictive, emotionally inflammatory, and utterly lacking in real spiritual nourishment. This path is about moving from being a passive consumer to becoming a conscious, active, and loving gatekeeper of your own mind. This is a very simple, practical habit. It's the practice of asking two simple questions. First, just as you choose foods that you know will nourish your body, you must choose information that will nourish your mind and spirit. Before you click that link, watch that video, or listen to that podcast, take a half-second to pause and ask yourself, what is my intention here? Am I genuinely seeking to understand something, or am I just looking for a quick hit of outrage or validation? And then, after you've consumed it, ask the second question. How do I feel now, in my body and in my spirit? Do I feel more informed, more compassionate, more connected? Or do I just feel more inflamed, more anxious, more resentful? You are the sole gatekeeper of your own precious mind. You have the power to choose. Choose wisely what you allow to enter your inner sanctuary. The fourth path, the practice of radical gratitude. We spoke of gratitude earlier as a pillar of prayer, and here it becomes a dynamic, world-altering path of action. This is about transforming gratitude from a fleeting, passive feeling into a disciplined, active lifestyle. Radical gratitude does not mean ignoring the pain, the injustice, and the suffering in the world. That would be a shallow and dishonest denial. Instead, it is the courageous act of refusing to let the pain be the only story. It is the disciplined, daily practice of actively searching for the light, no matter how small or dim it may seem on any given day. The practice can be as simple as keeping a small notebook by your bed. Before you turn out the light, take just 60 seconds to write down 3 specific things from your day that you are grateful for. The key is to be specific. Not just, I'm grateful for my family, but I am grateful for the way my grandchild laughed today on the phone. Not just, I'm grateful for my home, but I am grateful for the deep feeling of comfort and safety in my favorite chair. The taste of clean, cold water when you were thirsty. A song on the radio that stirred an old, happy memory. This practice is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about rewiring our brains, which are naturally wired by evolution to constantly scan for threats, to also actively scan for blessings. It does not deny the darkness, but it intentionally and powerfully amplifies the light. The fifth path, the humility of service. One of the most insidious and crippling effects of modern anxiety is that it shrinks our entire world down to the tiny, claustrophobic size of our own fears and worries. We become the main character in a very small, very stressful, and very repetitive story. The path of service is the most direct and beautiful way to break out of that prison of self-concern. By turning our attention from, how am I feeling, to how can I help, our own problems are often put into their proper, more manageable perspective. And service need not be a grand, dramatic gesture. It is rarely about starting a foundation or dedicating your whole life to a cause, unless you are called to do so. More often, and more powerfully, it is found in the small, humble, almost invisible acts of daily life. It is the act of putting down your phone and listening fully, without interruption, to a friend who needs to be heard. It is the act of sharing your knowledge or your skill with a younger person who is struggling. It is a simple, unexpected act of kindness toward a stressed-out stranger in the grocery store line. In serving others, in making their world just a little bit lighter for a single moment, we paradoxically heal and protect ourselves. Our own burdens always feel lighter when we help another person carry theirs. The sixth path, cultivating an unshakable hope. Finally, we walk the quiet, steady path of hope. Now, it is absolutely essential that we distinguish true hope from mere optimism. Optimism is the passive belief that things will somehow, someday, get better. Hope is something far more resilient and active. Hope is the deep conviction that we can make things better, or at the very least, that we have the inner resources to meet whatever happens with strength and grace. Hope is not a passive waiting for good news. It is a spiritual discipline. Hope is the quiet, unwavering faith in the turning of the seasons, even in the dead of winter, when nothing seems to be growing. It is a deep faith in the incredible, time-tested resilience of the human spirit to overcome unimaginable hardship. It is a stubborn faith in the enduring power of love, kindness, and courage to ultimately shine brighter than hatred and fear. You cultivate this hope by intentionally collecting stories of courage and kindness, by paying attention to the helpers you see in the news instead of just the chaos, by celebrating the small victories of goodness wherever you find them. Hope is a muscle. The more you consciously practice it, the more you focus on the countless reasons to have it, the stronger it becomes, until it is an unshakable foundation for your soul. The final lesson: what it means to be human now. And so, we arrive at the end of our 6 paths. We have walked from the stillness of our own soul to the quiet hope we can cultivate in the world. We have journeyed from a place of reaction to a place of intention. We have learned to build our sanctuary and to tend to its foundations. This brings us to the final lesson, the great "so what" of our entire conversation. What does all of this mean for us, right now, in this moment in history? Let's return, one last time, to where we began, with the cryptic whisper of an old prophecy, the story of an alien invasion. We deconstructed it, we contextualized it, and we found a deeper, metaphorical meaning in it. We came to see it not as a prediction about spaceships, but as a powerful story about the spiritual and psychological challenges of our own time. But now, let's take it one step further. Perhaps the old prophecies, in their own mysterious and cryptic way, were never really warnings about an enemy from the sky. Perhaps they were something else entirely. Perhaps they were invitations. An invitation to finally, after all these centuries of conflict and misunderstanding, look at each other across borders, across beliefs, across all the imaginary lines we have drawn in the sand, and truly recognize ourselves as one human family, sharing one fragile, beautiful, and irreplaceable home. Throughout history, the great unifying moments for any group of people have always come in the face of a common, external challenge. Nothing brings a village together faster than a shared threat. What the story of an alien encounter offers our collective imagination is the ultimate unifying thought experiment. It asks us, if we were faced with something truly other, something so profoundly different from us that it made all of our internal squabbles seem petty and insignificant, could we finally see past our differences? Could we finally act as one? The prophecy, in this light, isn't a forecast of doom. It is a spiritual challenge. It is a cosmic question being posed to humanity. Are you ready to evolve? Are you ready to grow up? Are you ready to see yourselves not as Americans or Russians, not as liberals or conservatives, not as members of this religion or that one, but simply as earthlings, as children of this planet? To be human in this age is to live with a profound and unprecedented paradox. For the first time in history, we hold the entirety of the world's knowledge and, simultaneously, the entirety of its sorrow, right in the palm of our hand, inside a little glowing rectangle. We are more connected than ever, and yet we report feeling more isolated than ever. We have access to infinite information, but seem to be losing our grip on wisdom. The great test of our time, the ultimate challenge that will define the future of our species, is not whether we can build smarter machines, but whether we can cultivate wiser and more compassionate hearts. And that is the final truth of our journey today. The ultimate first contact, the one that all the myths and prophecies are perhaps pointing us toward, is not with an alien race from a distant star. It is the first contact with the deepest, most courageous, and most compassionate parts of ourselves. And it is the first true contact with one another. That is the Great Awakening. That is the event that will truly change our world forever. And it is not something we need to wait for. It is something we can choose to begin right now, in our own lives, with our own hearts. Our journey together, from a mysterious prophecy whispered long ago to the sacred sanctuary of our own souls, now comes to a close. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for walking this path with me. Thank you for lending me your time and your attention, which are the most precious gifts any of us have to give. This was a long journey, and the world is full of so many things demanding your focus. And so, I have one small final request. If you are still listening now, if you have remained here to this final moment, would you do me the honor of commenting, "I am still here," below? It would mean the world to me to know that there are companions who have traveled this entire journey alongside me. It's a simple way of letting me know that these words didn't just go out into the void, but that they found a home. Your presence, even though we are separated by time and space, is the greatest encouragement, and it is the very reason these stories are told. Be well, be at peace, and please know that you are not alone.